Give me a moment. Okay, so we'll start then. Let me share my screen. So able to see my screen?
Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah. So yes, so let us discuss about the remaining concepts from Terraform. Okay. So Terraform, so we all know we do create an instances by deploying a Terraform templates, correct? So we can create our instances based on the requirement. And see, basically what will happen, whenever your pipeline creates from your Terraform templates, it will create an infrastructure, create an instance. Suppose if you want to deploy your application, create an instance. Inside that you will deploy your application. And once your pipeline completes, you will not be able to see that. Some of the infra will be available, should be available, and apart from that, it should not be available. So whenever need, it creates an infra and deploy your application, right? So how do we deploy our application? Through Kubernetes, right? So we do log into that instance as soon as it, and we do create our we can also create EKS cluster, right? And we can deploy our application via the pods, and we will monitor it from the probes in Kubernetes, and we can deploy it, right? So you are getting the clarity of the infrastructure tool.
Yes, Sandeep.
What about others?
Yes.
Okay, now we have a feature from Terraform, that is workspaces. Okay, so workspace is basically we can maintain the multiple environments in a, like what to say, in a single Terraform configuration. Okay, so say like when we have, see, we are aware of, we do have main file which is main.tf, right? Main.tf and variables.tf and the outputs.tf. We are aware of what is these three files, correct? So when you run Terraform init, it will validate those templates and plan and apply it, correct? Correct, right? So this, what the output should we need, this will print the output of the instances that we created. We deployed an EC2 instance, correct? Right. Now by using these templates, we can maintain the multiple environments when we have the single configuration Terraform from the single Terraform configuration file. Okay, you're getting my point. So called workspace. Okay, so workspace is basically the feature from Terraform. So it helps us to maintain, which help us to manage the multi-environment, multiple environments. Let's say, okay, see, suppose when we have 4 environments, we are aware of dev, QA, UAT, and prod. Say, suppose if you want to create an infrastructure in dev, so we do just modify our variables.tf, the environment. You're gonna pass the value the variable, environment, and the description and default, which environment that you want to deploy it. Getting my point? So in the variables, you're going to add, you will just edit only this single file, variable. Okay. So what the variable that you want? Environment variable, right? So what environment that you wanted? Description. Sorry, you will have to put a tab or two space. Okay, under the description, what you will have to mention. See, under description, what we need to mention, you need to think on that. Okay, so under description, you need to see what. See, in case of instance creation, see we have defined AMI ID for EC2 instance. Right now, when you are creating an EC2 instance with an environment, what you need to add it here. Okay, just a description. Okay, dev environment, let's put it this way, right? Under default you will put what? Okay, under environment, sorry, under default we will put west us 1, correct, right? So or or we'll put this way, us west, right? So only just we edit this. See, here we do have already the variable, correct? Region to deploy. This instance will deploy it in US East 1. Similarly, when you modify, just you will modify this variable.tf. You will just modify this variable.tf with the complete which region that you want to deploy. So here we mentioned US West 1. So when you run these commands, so it will get deployed with the US West region. Okay, so that we can done by workspaces. Okay, so we do have some of the commands in workspaces to from the Terraform to deploy it in a multiple environments. See, basically, so when we are using Terraform workspaces, which help us to manage the multiple environments, or we call it as multiple instances of same set of infrastructure code within a single Terraform configuration. You getting my point now? You guys are with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I'll give the definition here? Workspace. Let's give it this way. Workspaces. Guys, just a minute. Sorry, I was on mute. Okay. So what I'll give? I'll give Terraform workspaces. Okay, so what this help us to do, Terraform workspaces on a way to manage a multiple instances or the multiple environments. Okay, so when see obviously when we are having a web applications or the deployments that we do in multiple environments, we do just modify variable.tf. Okay, as we mentioning the environment name, and we do deploy to create. Suppose when we are creating instances in multiple environments, we do create, we do define the region. Suppose when we want to create cluster or your EKS cluster in multiple environments, we do replace the variable.tf to create a case cluster. Suppose the load balancer, we can create load balancer in multiple environments. We can create any resources from cloud, right? So according to our modules we do have here, right? So the Terraform modules from AWS and Terraform modules from Azure. Okay, so according to that we do mention the modules, and we do keep, will maintain the single infrastructure code, and just we modify our variables to deploy our infrastructure. Okay, so now I'll give a definition for Terraform workspaces. Okay, so Terraform workspaces, just a minute. Okay, so which helps us to manage. I'm audible, right?
Yes, Sandeep.
Okay, so which helps us to manage the multiple environment. I'll keep it as env. You can understand environment. Okay, so manage the multiple environments, and or the multiple instances, we call it as. Okay, so multiple instances of the same, of the, let's put it down, of the same set of infrastructure. Okay, of the same infrastructure code within a single Terraform configuration. Okay, now, so clear, right? This statement is clear, right? It is basically to manage. See, when they're asking about the how do we manage the multi-environment setup in Terraform, you explain Terraform workspace. See, Terraform workspace is a command. Okay, so you should tell that Terraform workspace is one of the feature from Terraform. So we will be managing the multi environments from Terraform workspaces. Okay, so by default Terraform uses the default workspace. I will show. Okay, so by default Terraform works Terraform uses default workspace. Okay, so I will show where this Terraform workspace showing as default. Okay, and also see, when you create a new workspace, Terraform creates a separate state file for that workspace. Okay, so let me log into the instance and we will explore more on workspaces. Okay, so basically when we are maintaining the huge infrastructure in a large amount of projects, so we use the feature from Terraform, which is Terraform workspaces. Okay, I hope you guys are understanding my statement, and you guys are able to create an infra, or at least the understanding is going well, right? Instance state, else here start instance. Okay, let it start. So there are some set of commands that we use in Terraform workspace. Okay, so I'm gonna give it here. Terraform workspace show is to list the Terraform workspace. Terraform workspace show is to just basically it will check which workspace that we're in Terraform environment. Okay. Similarly, we do have Terraform list. So it will list the workspaces that we created in Terraform environment. Okay. Similarly, Terraform workspaces to create the new workspace. Say like suppose if you want to create a new workspace as dev, so this will create Terraform workspace new dev. It will create a new environment called dev. Okay, so let's explore on in the server itself. Okay, now how do we get into that environment? There is a command called terraform select dev. So from this command, so it will get basically switching the namespaces, so we can say. Okay, so here you will create the workspace, and how do we get into that workspace? Select dev. So once you create a workspace called dev, so we can go into that environment by running select command. Okay, so now once you select it, you can just run terraform apply. It will get deployed. Okay, so these are all the commands related to the Terraform workspaces. Okay, now according to me, when you create your Terraform workspace, so here is are the configuration commands that you will run and you will get deployed it. What is the debug here? What is the debug level, right? So if there is a concept to create it and to fix, right, and there is a way to debug it, right? We should understand how do we debug this, and how should we should understand where need to fix, what need to fix, right? Or based on your error, right? So let me explain that. When you create your workspace here, okay, you will get select to dev, and you will list based on your error. When you get run, when you run the terraform apply, if your all configuration are works fine, it will give a message saying you have created successfully created an infrastructure, correct? If not, it will give some error, right? The region is down. uh, Guys, give me a moment, please. Have some background. I have some disturbance. Give me a moment, please. Sorry. I'm audible. Hello.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. So okay. So Terraform workspace is basically, see, there are some set of commands. So when we are troubleshooting, the troubleshooting part, when you run Terraform apply, so when you create the workspace in dev, so it will, your infrastructure will create in dev only. It will not create rest of the environments. Okay, with the same single configuration. See what, see here, the statement of workspace, Terraform workspace, which help us to manage the multiple environments, right, or multiple instances. So with us, with the same set of infrastructure code within the single Terraform configuration, right? So when we have our same single infrastructure code, we can create our infra with a single with multiple environment. That's what I wanted to say here through these commands. Okay, now let's log into the server. Where is the server? Okay, so it started. Let's log into it. Okay, the username should be this, right, followed by IP address. I'm just logging into that server. So make sure that you have installed Terraform, everyone, right? Let's keep accept. Okay, now I'm just gonna run Terraform version 2, check whether the Terraform is installed or not, right? Let's, able to see my screen. I have just logged in to the server and
Yes.
screen visible, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just increase the font size. Let's clear the screen. Let's check Terraform version, right? To check whether it is installed or not. Okay, Terraform version 1.12.2 is installed. Okay, now the Terraform is installed, right? Now, so as I said, by default, Terraform uses default workspace, right? How do we check that? To check the Terraform workspace, we run this command, Terraform workspace show. Okay, now what is shown here? Default, right? So the Terraform by default, it uses the workspace as default unless you create the workspaces. Getting my point? Okay. Now, to list the Terraform workspaces that we are in our environment. So let's list if there are any. Okay. So there is no workspaces that we created, correct? So there are only one workspace, which is, so the instance, remember that we have created an EC2 instance, right? Through this default workspace only. Okay. Now can we manage multi environment with a single configuration with the EC2 instance? Say the concept is to create EC2 instance, right? We have only one configuration with one set of configuration. We can create the instance in dev environment. We can create instance in QA environment, UAT and prod environments, correct? Correct, right? That's how we have to implement the workspaces in Terraform. Okay. Now let's create the workspace. Okay. So this is the command to create a workspace, Terraform workspace, new dev. Okay. Now created and switched to the workspace called dev, right? You were able to see here. Now, how do we switch to that environment? We just select and pass a environment name, and it will show a message saying we are switched into that workspace. Now, which command that we need to run, that we are in which environment? Terraform workspace show. We are in dev environment, right? Then how do we list the environments to check for more information? So we can run Terraform workspace list. So here you can see you are in which environment. Similarly, it is kind of switching a branch, or it is kind of switching a namespaces. Clear with this statement? Clear with this concept?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so here in the environments, you can just have your instance creation, and once you create an instance, this will not be available in default. When you create in default, that resources will not be available in dev. Whatever the resources, whatever the infra that you create irrespective of the environments, it will be available in your with irrespective of environments. You getting my point? That's how. So when you just run Terraform apply, before run Terraform apply, you should have your configuration file in your server. Okay. So here is your, suppose you can, for instance creation, you can use the same, just modify your variables.tf instead of east us. There is also the environment called dev. So you can change this region and get deployed it. Some set of region we call it as dev, QA, UAT, and prod, correct? So based on that, based on security groups, we can call it here, and the AMI should be changed for different environments, correct? So here we track for dev environment, this should be different. For prod environment, this should be different, right? AMI. According to that, it will get deployed. Getting my point? Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. So any questions and any doubts, guys? And also we can do cost saving by doing this Terraform workspace. Okay, but you need to implement it. That's it. There is nothing with this uh, Terraform workspace. We need to implement that. Okay, so basically the first point, we can manage multiple environment by a single set of configuration with a single Terraform configuration with multiple environments, and we can also do test the changes. We can also do updates in a temporary workspace without affecting production, right? We can also do testing our changes, correct? Right. So let's give the use cases so that you can understand more. So use cases, right? So the very first point, multi-environment. So I'll write it this way, right? So multi-environment. So we use the same set of infrastructure code, right? So we use the same set of infrastructure code to manage multi environments like dev, QA, prod, UAT. Let's keep UAT. For pre-prod, we call it as UAT. User acceptance test. Before production, the environment called UAT. Okay. And also the second point I can give it here. So testing the changes, correct? You can also do testing the changes. What is mean by this testing it changes? How do we incorporate this Terraform workspace when we do testing the changes? We can try updates in a temporary workspace, correct? Temporary workspace in the sense dev workspace. So where we can do your R&D, right? testing a changes. So we do try updates or implementation. We call it as try updates or implementation in a temporary. Okay. So in a temporary workspace without affecting, without affecting production. Correct. So you can also set up the workspace in your project when you join the project without affecting the production. So you can create your own workspace and you can work on it. Correct, right? So we can do our own updates. We can check our updates, or we can test the code, test the changes, right? We can do in our workspace. Whatever you do it, you can do it in dev workspace. So once it is success only, we do deploy it in QA, UAT and prod, right? This we can do, right? The use cases, correct? Are you guys with me?
Yes, Sandeep.
Yes.
Okay. So similarly, we do have. So this is very important. Cost savings. We should also explain whenever working in a project, because nowadays everyone look for cost cutting or cost saving, right? How this cost saving will happen when you use your workspace. See, say suppose, let's take this only. When you test your changes directly in the production, when without deploying it in our dev environment, dev workspace, will it get affected in production, right? Everything will be in under down and you will get more costing. Again, you will have to fix it and your application will be downtime when you are until you fix that, right? Correct, right? So through this feature, we can deploy in dev workspace. Then it's a kind of cost saving only, na? Right? So in a kind of cost savings, okay, spin up and destroy temporary environments. Correct, right? So we can create our temporary environments. We can spin up. We can suppose if you want to deploy your instance in any of the region or any of the environment, you can deploy it easily by creating your workspace. Suppose if you want to deploy your environment in dev workspace, you can deploy it, right? Correct, na? So once it works, then only we do keep the master code in master branch from the Terraform code, and we do deploy it. That's it. Correct, right? So that's how the workspaces works in the multi environment. When we are managing multiple environment, we do prefer the workspaces. Getting my point now? So any questions
sir.
and any doubts, guys, here?
No question, sir.
Clear with this uh, concept?
Yes.
See, you might get a question saying where we need to change, where we need to point our environments. So when it meant for multiple environments or multi environments, when we are managing our multi instances, and where we need to point our variable called or variables as an environment, we do pass our parameters in variables.tf. That's it. Right. So that's how it works. Okay. Now let's move to the another concept in Terraform, that is Terraform drift. Okay. See, these are all the terminologies we use in the Terraform environment. Okay. These things are very important. They might ask the twisted question. If you are not even worked in the project also, you can catch the statement what they're asking, right? So if you understood this workspace, you should think on what they're asking. Okay, let how they'll ask, how you will manage your multiple environments through the Terraform. That's it. The question is very simple, looks simple, and you need to explain them, right? You can explain to them there is a concept or there is a feature called Terraform workspace where we manage our infra with the multiple environments. So according to our namespaces that we are in our workspace EKS cluster with the Kubernetes environment. According to that, we were having the workspaces created, and we do deploy our infrastructure based on the namespaces that we are in Kubernetes environment. So you guys can explain this way, right? When they're asking about when they're managing about the multiple environments, correct? You can give an example, dev, QA, UAT, and prod, right? Okay, now let's discuss about the further concept in Terraform. Terraform drift, as I said, right? So what is this Terraform drift? How do we manage it and how do we fix it? How it will happen? Terraform drift, and what is the feature of this? Okay, see, when we are talking about the Terraform drift is basically, you might in a generic statement, what is meant by drift, right? That will go that way. Drift is basically you are giving some drift, right? So when you do drift in your two-wheeler, or when you do drift in your four-wheeler, or when maybe in your any vehicle, we call it as drift, right? Means kind of statement in Terraform saying Terraform drift if the infrastructure is created out of Terraform templates, which is not in the control of Terraform templates, so called drift. Means, suppose, let's take an example of this templates of your this from this template we can create our EC2 instance, correct? Say like this template is creating an instance with a T2 micro. Instead of creating T2 micro, it has created T3 nano, right? Means that T3 nano is not created with this Terraform template, which might be created with a manual effort, or maybe somebody has created, which is not managed by our Terraform template, so called drift. You're getting my point. See, when you are having your in a cloud project, or when you are having in a huge project, you can create a resources, but that resource is using in production, which we are not managed in our Terraform template, right? See how we can work in Terraform environments. We can write our Terraform templates, we can define our variables, and we can define our uh, templates in a managed way, because we don't want to edit those templates again and again. We should keep it in a reusable code, as in terms of libraries. We should maintain that, right? Instead of creating modifying templates again and again, we don't want to do it. We'll keep it in a controlled library, and as soon as we create a workspace, we do apply it, Terraform apply, and we clone the repository, and we deploy our Terraform templates. That's what we do, correct? Now, when we are talking about the drift concept in Terraform, if the resource is created in a out of control of Terraform, that resource is using in a production which is not managed by our Terraform templates, call it as drift, which is missing to create. But that resource is we are using in production because we are unable to define it. So called drift. Right? You getting my point? Are you able to understand this concept? Or you guys are confused?
No, we understood.
Okay. What about others?
Yeah, understood, Sandeep.
Okay. See, it is basically the simple statement drift. Okay. Let's make this understanding. Okay. The simple concept. So when you create your infrastructure without the, you are not making controlling the resource from your Terraform template. You are create either you will create it manually or somebody has created some template, other templates. We can have our cloud template also, right? Which managed by those cloud templates, correct, right? Instead of managing in Terraform, right? So they can also deploy through Ansible, correct? So some servers they have deployed some infrastructure that they have deployed for Ansible. They're managing through those templates instead of maintaining in Terraform. That we call it as Terraform drift. Okay, so I'll give a statement here. The actual state of infrastructure. Okay, the actual state of infrastructure has changed outside the Terraform's control. Okay, so called drift. Okay, so it no longer matches. I'll give it down so that you can see the statement. So it no longer matches what's defined in the Terraform code. Or in the Terraform state file. Okay, so you might aware of state file in Terraform. .tf files we call it as state files. Okay, so I'll give it in a bracket .tf file. Okay, so .tf in the sense these are all your state files only, na? Variables.tf and main.tf, the extension that we're gonna use in Terraform, which is .tf, so-called state files, right? So Terraform drift is basically the actual state of environment has changed outside the Terraform's control, right? So when we are not having the control of the infrastructure which is created with other or manually from the other templates, we call it as Terraform drift, right? You getting my point now? And similarly, as I said and explained, as I explained one of the scenario. So when you want to create your instance, instead of creating T2 micro, it has created T3 nano, right? So that's what we call it as Terraform drift. And also, if someone logged AWS console, see, we can create our resources through this console also, right? There is a template called AWS console, right? So here we can access our shell, cloud shell, right? So through here also we can create our Terraform environments, right? So they can deploy the template easily in the region called US West, US East, right? Correct, right? So if you can also create an infrastructure environment here. This is from the cloud shell. The resources also we can create through this cloud shell also, right? Correct, right? So called Terraform drift. Okay. Now, when it happened, Terraform drift, okay, you will get to know that, okay, it is not managed by Terraform drift, which is not managed by Terraforms. And how do we identify it and how do we fix it, right? So how to identify first? Okay, we use Terraform plan, correct? We have a command called Terraform plan right here. So what this plan will do, this will plan according to the templates which we have modified. Okay, so what this plan will do, it will go to the main.tf. Where is our main.tf? According to this, when creating an instance, the main.tf is this, right? Now, what we mentioned under main.tf, we have defined provider as AWS, and the region is this, and the create resource of EC2 instance, the Amazon machine image, which is this, and the instance type is this, and the name of the server should be demo server. This is the main.tf. What Terraform plan will do, it will fix in the Terraform's mind saying I should create T2 micro as the server name called demo server. It will plan accordingly. Now, when you run Terraform plan in your workspace, say suppose if you are running Terraform plan in a different workspaces, it will give a complete plan. Say suppose when you run Terraform plan, just to understand. See, it gives some error, correct? Because now it is giving no configuration files. Why? Because we don't have any main.tf and variables.tf and output.tf, correct? In this environment, right? Now, this Terraform drift will identify by Terraform plan. Okay, this will compare your code and the state file with the real infrastructure. Is it comparing it now? Because why it is giving an error? We don't have any files here. If the files is present, it will give an error, or it will compare both the Terraform configuration and with the state file. State file in the sense your Terraform configuration and with the code. Okay, this will identify and identifies the Terraform plan. If you identified, okay, you find a drift. Okay, if you find a drift called, instead of creating T2, it's created T3. You identifies it, then you will call it in your Terraform templates and you read deploy it. That's how we fix the Terraform drift. Okay, you were able to understand this? Troubleshooting.
Yes, sir.
Troubleshooting drift. Okay, so when you run Terraform plan, okay, so when you run Terraform plan, Terraform will compare the code. Terraform, just a minute. Sorry. So when you run Terraform plan, so Terraform will compare Terraform will compare the code plus state file with the real infrastructure. Okay. Infrastructure. Okay. So with the real infrastructure. Okay. So let's give it this way. So if the drift, okay, so if the drift exists, okay, so what it gives, So it will show changes. Okay, so it will show changes. So example, the instance type will be changed from okay, the instance type will be changed from T2 medium to okay, T2 medium like this, T3 T2 micro. Okay, so it give a message saying the instance type will be changed. The instance type will be changed from T2 medium to T2 micro. Means you will see a drift here, so called Terraform drift. Okay, when you run Terraform plan, that's it. So you will identify by running Terraform plan. It should be Terraform. Okay, so it will give a message saying this, and you will again modify in your variable. Instead of T2 medium, you will point, instead of T2 micro, you will point T2 medium. Okay, so this is the troubleshooting part, the drift troubleshooting part, right? You getting my point now? So this is mismatch happen when somebody is created and that resource is using in production, and that's how the drift we can identify and we can fix it. So once you identified it, you will point this in your main.tf, and again you will keeping the control in Terraform templates. Clear? You guys are with me?
Yes, Sandeep.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions and any doubts, guys? Any concept that you want to understand?
Sandeep, for we are creating the instances using Terraform, right? What method we maintain? So these instances are created by Terraform only, not manually. So how do we maintain? Only we are mentioning in the tag it is created by Terraform.
See, we do prefer only Terraform. There is no way to create the method. Nobody will create instance in manually.
Okay.
Okay, if the instances are creating through the Terraform only or from the cloud templates, that's it. Clear?
Yes.
Any questions and any doubts, guys? And you can achieve this through pipeline, right? You will do Terraform workspace created, and anyways your templates will be available in your GitLab, and you will pull that. Once you clone your repository, all your Helm charts, all your Terraform templates, all the files will come into your locally, and whatever the files it is required, it pulls and it creates an infra, it creates a build, and it get deployed into an application. Everything will happen in your pipeline. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions again? Any doubts? If not, let's wind up the session. Let's connect tomorrow for further concepts in Terraform. Any questions, Arun? Hello? Any doubts and any questions, guys?
Sir, in this variables.tf file, so every time we have to provide AMI values.
See, the requirement is to create your instance, right?
Yes.
When we want to switch the workspace, obviously we should modify in the variables.tf only.
Okay. So
If
every time we have to output the values.
yes, if it is required, you should provide it. So AMI is basically see, we will be having, is AMI is different for different instances or same,
It's different.
right? If it is different, we do provide it. How this will pick? See, we can assign instances with different environments, right? Correct, right? There is no particular instances that we can assign to the particular environment called dev. Your prod instance also can be assigned it as a dev environment, correct?
Yes.
For R&D purpose, for your code change purpose, code checking purpose, testing purpose, correct? So the only thing that we go with the AMI ID, that's it. Correct, right?
Yes, sir. So based on the requirement, we have to select.
Yes, based on requirement. So for your question, when you're asking particularly, yes, we do point for AMI for different instances for different environment. And guys, keep in mind whenever you are saying a statement now, it feels you should work on it. You strongly approach them. Yes, I worked on Drift. I have approached it. I have ran Terraform plan, and I identifies that one of the environment I found that T2 instead of creating T2 micro, you show them share screen and show it. Write a statement. That's how it worked on it. I found this is one of the challenge in my project. The most challenging task I found, identified it, and I have implemented Terraform Drift. It was keep on missing when it is creating, and then I found a concept called Terraform Drift in the particular concept, and I have modified it and identified and implemented it. That's how you can make a statement of most challenging task. When you are saying this, you need to speak more in the interviews, guys. Keep in mind. There is nothing like only you need to make a statement for their questions. No. When he asked, you need to pull him into your environment, not into his environment. And suppose if he want, he'll only tell wantedly, let's stop this and let's go to another concept, the discussion. That's how you need to motivate him. You're getting my point? Even when you're working also saying, see, if you know half of the concept also, explain more. They'll think like you will get a time. You will get a time to learn rest of the concepts, correct? Whatever you've learned, whatever you know, you explain that strongly. That's it. The remaining concept, you will get a time to learn and you will implement it in further concepts. That's how it works. Correct? Correct, na?
Yes, sir.
I hope you guys are following same and practicing all the concepts and getting ready for the interviews, because before festival we are planning to wind up the session. Be practiced, okay? And again we'll be having face to face. Anybody visited anybody met Sandeep and understood the concept?
No,
No,
sir.
Sandeep
No,
is
Sandeep.
like he's still planning to meet up with all the candidates. So we are waiting for it.
Okay, fine then. Let's meet in the. We'll speak in internally and we'll inform in the group. Anyways, he'll be taking Q&A in evenings, so he will inform. I'll say the same thing. They're waiting for you to explain and they wanted to meet. So let's have. Okay, let's execute. Okay, clear, right? Anybody has any concerns that you want to leave the session and you don't want to get a job? Anybody has any concern here? And you feels like it is very difficulty and you are not clear on any of the concept and even you face still communications. See, when you learn these only, you will get more package. That's it. That's what I can say. Okay. Anyways, let's wind up the session. Let's connect tomorrow. I'll share this in the group.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.